Last thing before I do introduce our panelists is actually a video that Corteva has provided to introduce what is unique about Corteva Agriscience. So before we start our panel discussion, we will play that video and then we'll get going.
We all know who runs a farm. The one who calls the shots, decides what to grow, and how to grow it. But it's not just farmers. It's Sophia. That's right, Sophia, a new kind of consumer who's informed and empowered and knows exactly what she wants to eat and how she wants it grown. In addition to everything else that can make farming so unpredictable, weather, pests, volatile markets, and trade disruptions, farmers must now respond to changing consumer demands. The supply chain is flipping, and consumers like Sophia aren't at the end of it. They're at the beginning. We call it table-to-farm agriculture. It's the future of farming, and it's what we're working on right now. It starts with our seeds, bred to be as resilient and productive as the people who grow them. And new targeted breeding technologies like CRISPR that promise to help farmers adapt to demanding consumers and equally demanding conditions. With the right tools, farmers can do more than react to change. They can anticipate it. We're pioneering virtual farming to help farmers prototype new ways of growing before they even plant a seed. When we overlay different kinds of data, we're helping farmers make smarter, faster decisions across the farm. Environmental and historical data to know which seeds to plant where and when. Drone and satellite imagery to pinpoint where crop protection is needed. Weather data and artificial intelligence to generate higher yields with lower environmental impact. It's the dawn of a new agricultural revolution, driven by consumers and built on sustainability. At Corteva Agriscience, we're developing integrated whole farm solutions that are reinventing the world's oldest industry as one of the most modern. With table-to-farm agriculture, farmers, Sophia, and our planet all win, and we all keep growing.
Fantastic. Well, I think that was a perfect way to start off our panel conversation with Corteva Agriscience. I'll now ask our four panelists to join me. Here they come. Welcome, Corteva. I have with me Jonathan Jones. We have Arvind, Beverly, and Rhonda all joining as our panelists. We're super excited to have you and appreciate you joining us for Delaware Days. Now, the first question we had to start things off is a pretty easy one, just a round robin of introductions. So Rhonda, do you want to start us off by introducing yourself, your education as far as background is concerned, and how it led you to your current role at Corteva Agriscience?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. And I'm Rhonda Ham. My background, I have an undergraduate degree in agricultural education. So I actually started out my career as a high school agriculture teacher. So I was really passionate about education and outreach and teaching. And then decided I would go to graduate school. So I went to grad school. In high school, I actually had an experience as an intern in an entomology lab. For those of you that might not know what entomology is, that is the study of insects. I actually was terrified. Hard internship for me, I thought. Ended up changing my life, and I went to graduate school for entomology. So I have a master's and a PhD in entomology. So technically Dr. Rhonda Ham. And that led me to Corteva Agriscience, where I've been now for 13 years, and in a variety of roles, everything from research and development, working on new products and new ways to control pests on our food, to working in education and outreach. So getting to do things like this for my job, which is amazing and absolutely fun.
Thank you, Rhonda. Beverly, would you care to go next?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Beverly Horton. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Chemical Engineering. I joined Dow Agrisciences as an environmental health and safety specialist, spent 2 years there, and then the rest of my career has been in supply chain. for both our crop protection platform and our seeds platform. I've been with the company, Corteva Agriscience, for 18 years. And in those 18 years have done several different roles in supply chain. And I recently just transitioned into what people would call my out-of-body experience. So I am currently a zonal program leader in our commercial team. Responsibilities include managing the pipeline for new products, managing launches and competitive advantage, and making sure that we are investing in our innovation and getting that to the market as quick as possible to our end consumer.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Beverly. Arvind, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Arvind Jagannathan. I finished my undergraduate education in India. I hold a bachelor's and a master's degree in chemistry. Had the opportunity to do an internship in a chemistry lab when I was doing my master's degree, and I just absolutely loved it. And so I decided I want to go to grad school. And so I completed my PhD in chemistry from Michigan State in 2014. So I've basically been with the company for about 7 years now. The first couple of years I spent as a part of a process chemistry group based in Midland, Michigan. And over the last 4.5 years or so, I've been with the discovery chemistry group here at Corteva Agriscience. Currently, I wear multiple hats. I lead a group of comprised primarily of new hires that join Corteva Agriscience. It's called the Residence Group, and just as the name indicates, they come in and it's an onboarding process for the first couple of years before they move on to bigger, better things. I also lead the recruiting efforts for our discovery chemistry organization. And I'm also co-leading one of our very early stage herbicide projects in our pipeline. Happy to be here, and I'm happy you guys take the time to be a part of this as well.
Thank you, Arvind. And last but certainly not least, Jonathan, would you like to finish off the introductions for us?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan Jones. I received my undergraduate in biochemical engineering from the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia. Right after that, I moved to Costa Rica for a few months to work as a sustainability engineer. And then I joined Heritage Dow Agrisciences, now Corteva, as a manufacturing production engineer. So I was working on producing our products in which we sell to our customers. So an insecticide is what I was working on. After that role, I moved to Indianapolis, Indiana, where I joined research and development as an improvement engineer. I worked there for about 3.5 years and then moved to the project management group to work on building new facilities where we create our products. So in that role, I worked on designing an administration building, moving some IT infrastructure, and also installing a new piece of equipment. Completely unrelated to biochemical engineering, but fun nonetheless. While working, I finished my MBA in supply chain and marketing this past February, and I started a new role the same month. So I'm now the fermentation research team leader. I lead 3 laboratories focused on producing products using microorganisms. I have a team of 12 that range from engineers to biochemists to chemists, all of the above. Really fun work that I do.
Well, I always enjoy starting a panel with that question. It's so fascinating to see what led you to your current role and just the diversity among our panelists and their current positions at Corteva. So thank you for starting us off there. My first kind of quick fire question actually goes straight back to you, Jonathan, and lets you kind of expand upon what you were just discussing. How did you find your passion in agriscience? I imagine that's something in high school and college maybe you weren't hearing a lot about.
Yep, sure. So I actually got involved in agriculture through undergraduate research, but prior to that, I was doing research on the metabolism of cells that secrete insulin. So I was trying to figure out why do transplants for pancreas not work? And so we're figuring out why do these cells in low oxygen conditions die? And through that, I went back to school and started working with a professor who was working on creating a system that cool milk for farmers in Africa without the use of electricity. So that's where I originally got my passion for agriculture. But funny enough, the whole engineering degree was by mistake. So I thought I was registering for biomedical engineering, which is completely unrelated to biochemical, but it was right next to it. Checked the wrong box. I completely loved my classes, so I stayed in the degree. And I've been in agriculture and doing research in it ever since. So sometimes life leads you down a path to a passion that you didn't actually even know you had. So I was super excited to kind of be welcomed into a community focused on fermentation, which kind of has roots in agriculture, but really fermentation is broad. It could be in pharma, it could be in ag, but that research program really helped me to see that there was a place for me in agriculture.
Good. Well, it seems like it was a fortunate mistake, and you found your calling. So that's a fun story. I appreciate you sharing that. Before we get into some questions about a day in your life working at Corteva in your role, I have one final question and kind of considering your background and experience. So I'm going to pose this to two different panelists, starting with Arvind. Would you mind sharing any advice that you would have given yourself looking back at your time, either in high school or college?
Yeah, I'd say maybe two pieces of advice, right? First one, I think this is something that I've realized a lot later on, was always ask for feedback, even if the answer is no. Even if you get, looked over for another opportunity, or folks don't think you're ready just yet, always follow up and ask them for feedback, right? And just ask them, hey, are there skills that I'm lacking? What is it in my CV that I can do to kind of bolster it a bit? When do you think I'd be ready for this? So rather than just kind of walking away from something disappointed or, thinking that you've lost out, I think just always try to follow up on what could you do better. I think that always is good advice. And I just wish I had a lot more of that, rather than just kind of wallowing, right, in sorrow, saying, I missed out on an opportunity, but, just make something positive out of it, right? And the other advice I'd always give is there's no such thing as a bad job or a bad, experience. Just treat everything as a learning experience, right? There's good and there's bad. Just don't have this monolithic view of, this job's really bad or I just hate it. There's going to be aspects about a job you love, and there's going to be aspects that you don't like. But if you learn to look at it as, being a little bit more selfish, right? Saying, I have something to learn from this, make it more of a positive experience where you'll actually find certain aspects of the job that you really like. And then you'll also know what you don't like about it and what you want to stay away from in the future.
Right. Those are great points. Appreciate you sharing that. And Rhonda, is there anything you'd like to add in what advice you would give yourself looking back at your time in school?
Yeah, I think keep an open mind. Luckily, I did that by accident. Like I said, that internship that I had, so I was terrified. I thought this was going to be the worst experience of my life, but it was paid and I was trying to save money for college. And so that what motivated me to go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get out as soon as I can. That's the attitude that I went into it with. In hindsight, I wish I'd have gone into it with, I can do this. This is going to be a great experience. Kind of some of the things that Arvind was saying of, I'm going to learn something here that's going to be useful. But, my attitude then wasn't that. But it did completely change my life in terms of it introduced me to something that I had no idea that there were jobs and careers in that area or what that even entailed. And personally, I got to overcome a fear that I had. So I don't have that same reaction now that I had. And so I think, when we're afraid of something, it inhibits us from trying it. And so we don't really know enough about it until we try it. And so for me, that was a big learning of try things that make you nervous, make you uncomfortable, because those are the best learning experiences. You grow so much more from those experiences than the ones where, yeah, this is comfortable, I know how to do this, and it's easy. If it's easy, it's not a challenge.
Great point. Great point. Well, appreciate you both sharing that, Arvind and Rhonda. Our next question I'm going to pose to each panelist kind of in a real quick fire answer. So starting with Beverly, would you mind sharing what you did yesterday at work? I think it's going to be fun hearing the difference from all four panelists.
What I did yesterday at work. So in my current role now as a zonal program leader, my responsibility is to take the team through the budgeting cycle. So I have responsibilities for 119 projects worth about $1 billion to the company when they all mature. And every year we have to go through and assess, what are the activities are we doing? What trials, what data, what commercial, the commercial team, how are we going to market it? How are we going to brand it? What are we going to call it? So I work with a lot of different functions within the company, from supply chain operations to R&D to breeding to commercial sales. And what we do is we roll up all the numbers to say, this is what we need for the next year to in order to operate and complete the different milestones and tasks that we need to complete in order to reach a certain launching time frame. So what I did yesterday was work through the numbers, right? And we rolled up to a budget. The number was higher than what it was needed to be. And so we had to have a meeting and decide who was going to get what. And then we went back down to say, okay, I need to cut $5 million. Where's it coming from? What can we do? How do we continue to stay on strategy? How do we continue to move forward? But at the same time, be able to reprioritize some of our activities so that we can continue to do work and be profitable or afford to do work. And at the end of the day, get the product out to our consumers in time. So a lot of number crunching and talking and negotiating with teams.
Well, sounds like probably every day is pretty different for you. Thank you for sharing that. Jonathan, we'll pass it over to you next. What did your day at work look like yesterday?
Sure. So I have a team of 11. So on any given day, I may have one-on-ones with them. So I had 3 yesterday. So just talking about their progress, on how they're doing with their goals, what are their projects. And actually we're in what's called performance review or performance achievement, where we really summarize collectively how the year's gone. I also actually led a meeting. So I'm the facilitator for our department communications meeting. And so that's when all of our employees get together virtually to talk about what's going on. So I did that. And I also met with some data scientists yesterday to talk about the experiment that I'm running right now. So I'm a leader, but I'm also a scientist too. So we're talking through the data across the different scales to figure out why things from R&D weren't working correctly in manufacturing and trying to figure out how to make it more effective. So that's what I did yesterday.
Wearing many hats, it sounds like. Thank you for sharing that. Rhonda, over to you.
Yeah, so I'm going to explain what my day would have looked like pre-COVID versus post-COVID, just because there's a little bit of a difference. So pre-COVID, I would have been in Phoenix, Arizona, because there was a conference there working with university industry partnerships. And so we collaborate with universities, we collaborate with other businesses, we work with a lot of different organizations. And so would have been meeting with them in person in Phoenix. But given that this is a COVID environment, we met virtually like this. And so my day started out with that group, talking to them about supply chain resiliency. And what does that mean in the food supply chain? Why, were we dumping milk at one point and yet people have enough food on the shelves, right? So we had a big discussion around that. And then I went from meeting to a meeting for Million Women Mentors. And so looking at how do we get more women involved in mentoring each other and raising each other up and bringing the next generation of scientists along with us. And then I went from there to a meeting where we internally have developed a coloring book for youth on women in agriculture and what do the careers in agriculture look like. And it's not your typical pictures of here's a tractor and somebody standing in a field. The pictures are some of that, but mostly they're, of an engineer standing in a manufacturing plant with these big giant tanks behind them. It's a picture of someone flying a drone over the field and doing imagery. And so we had a project meeting about how are we going to launch that into the marketplace? How are we going to get that to our collaborators? And so my day looked very different depending on the hour that we're talking about. So that's kind of my day in a nutshell.
Forgot I muted myself. I appreciate you too sharing the difference of what maybe it would have looked like pre-COVID versus now. It's definitely a new time we're working through, but glad you were able to join us nonetheless. And Arvind, do you mind finishing that question for us? What did your day look like yesterday?
First of all, I'll say, I know Beverly and Jonathan and Rhonda, and I had no idea that's what their typical days look like. Really fascinating. This is great. So like I said, I do wear 3 different hats, right? I got some project leadership responsibilities, which are more technical. I got some people leadership responsibilities, not too unlike what Jonathan has, right? And also got recruiting responsibilities. And as it turns out, I actually had opportunities to touch on all 3 areas yesterday, right? It started out bright and early in the morning, 7:30 was in the lab. I ran a couple of reactions because I had 9 o'clock Zoom meetings. And so I just want to make sure that I was in and out of the lab before the 9 o'clock, Zoom meeting started. But 9 o'clock, I had a bunch of one-on-ones, very similar to Jonathan, end of the year, trying to go through how people have been doing through the rest of the year and what our goals going to look like for next year, just catching up on some of that. Afternoon, I actually had a meeting with our bunch of integrated field sciences folks that are based in Europe. Just like, in pharma, you've got clinical trials. What we do in agriculture is we have field trials, right? So we're basically taking some of the compounds and herbicides and trying to take it to the geographies where they'll eventually get used. In this case, it's Europe. They were just sharing some of the data that they had on some experimental compounds that we shipped to them, just giving us some feedback on, hey, what's looking good? What are the areas that could be areas for follow-up, right? So just talking to some of the field scientists. And the last thing I did in the day, 5 o'clock, and I think it's probably one of the best parts of my job, I actually had to call up this postdoctoral student at University of Michigan saying he's got an offer to join Discovery Chemistry, and that was the last, we actually got to make an offer, and that was actually the last of the open positions that we were trying to fill in Discovery Chemistry. And it's just one of the best ways to end the day. And I'm very hopeful he'll accept our offer and come in the site to work with the chemists on this team. So that's what my day was like yesterday.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad you got to end your day with something so positive. That is always exciting, being able to bring someone great news, especially at a time like this. So we have a few final questions, and we are running low on time. We want to make sure we have time to answer the questions that are popping into the Q&A. So I'm going to ask 3 final questions, if everyone doesn't mind trying to keep it under a minute or so, and then we'll get into the last little bit of Q&A with our audience. So Jonathan, and I'm excited about your answer. You gave a little sneak preview during your run through, but usually a hard question to answer. What career mistake has given you the biggest learning lesson, or just what has been one of your biggest career mistakes?
Yeah, so when I started in manufacturing in Michigan, I actually contaminated one of our very large vessels that Rhonda talked about by changing a part of our process and not letting my boss or anyone else check my work. And so it really taught me about change management and ensuring that the communication that's needed to make change is actually present. Because sometimes someone could check your work and be like, oh, you forgot a valve here, or you didn't consider this right here. So it's definitely humbled me to not come from undergrad and just say, I know everything, to be a part of a team and say, hey, we can lean on each other when needed.
Well, you weren't kidding. That is a mistake you probably learned a lot from, but at least seemingly it all worked out. You're still here with us. So was it a detriment to your career? Thank goodness. Thank you for sharing that. And in kind of wrapping up our panel, I'd love for everyone to kind of have an idea of a next step, or if they're interested in careers at Corteva Agriscience, to know a little bit more about what that looks like. So in our final 2 questions, before we hit the questions in the Q&A, Arvind, do you mind briefly sharing what an ideal candidate looks like when hiring, or maybe that person you offered the job to yesterday?
Yeah, happy to share. So I'll say this, what I was formally trained to do in grad school or even during my bachelor's and master's, right, there's so little of that I actually use on a daily basis, right? I think what all that education does and what all that professional training does is just makes you a better problem solver, makes you better, at trying to identify what's the easiest way of getting here, how do I test this hypothesis, what does the iterative cycle look like, right? And so I think, folks that are problem solvers and folks that are able to work in pretty big teams, I think are the ones that will do really well, right? And then just to kind of put it into perspective, working in a very early stage, discovery stage project, On a weekly basis, I'll talk to our formulation folks. I'll talk to our IP team to figure out what our patent strategy is. I'll talk to the process chemistry folks, trying to figure out what the scale-ups are going to look like, right? I'll be talking to the biologists who are actually testing our compounds in the greenhouse. I'm not an expert in any one of those fields, right? I'm not formally trained in any of that, but as a project leader, right, you have to be able to speak the lingo. You have to be able to understand, at least have a working knowledge of all of that, right? So people that are very flexible to learning, as Rhonda mentioned, right, early on, and folks that are able to work in big teams, and folks that are good at identifying and solving problems. I think those are the ones that do really well. We obviously look for those qualities when we are hiring.
Well, I hope everyone took note of that. Arvind, thank you for sharing. And our last panel question before I post some of those Q&As, Beverly, do you mind sharing what does it take, and you're a great person to pose this to lead in your career?
I think it takes initiative. It takes you knowing what your passion is, what you enjoy, and to me, it's about bringing your authentic self to work, where you feel comfortable in being who you truly are, and being able to vocalize what you really like to do, and what you're passionate about. And circling back onto what Rhonda said earlier, is to me, it's you come in having a plan, but you should always be flexible, because that plan may not always go from A, B, C to D. It may take a different route before you get to your where you ultimately want to be. But I think it's having a support network. Like Arvind said, we are not experts in every field. As long as you have a great support network as a sounding board, whether it's about your project or how do you navigate certain meetings or certain audiences, it's important to be able to have a go-to network to just use as a sounding board, and to share your ideas and get feedback, so that you continue to improve and develop and be the better you, or the best you can be.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that, Beverly. And I will say to all the attendees, I've been so excited about this panel conversation in particular, because as you can tell, they're very passionate about what they do. They have so much great feedback and energy. So we had a really fun run through, and I was so excited to actually get to pose these questions to them. But in wrapping up, we only have a few minutes left. So I'm going to try and combine some of these questions. The first being, what type of degree or education do I need to start a career in ag science? And then maybe beyond that, are there any additional tips beyond a set educational pathway that you would recommend?
I can sort of start that one. So I'm going to give the answer of it depends. It depends on what you want to do and what you see yourself doing. So you may need a advanced degree if you want to be a scientist creating protocols and testing new products. You may only need a bachelor's degree for entering it into a sales role, for example, or potentially no degree, maybe an associate's degree for being a technician in one of our labs. So it really varies on what is it that you want to do, and what do you see yourself being, and where do you see yourself wanting to go? So plan on kind of that long-term vision, because maybe what you want to do now, you can do it at a certain level, but what you plan to accomplish in the future, you may need to think, I might need some more classes or some more education or something else. And so I think it's hard to give you an answer of, okay, if you want to be in agriculture, do this and you will be there.
Mm-hmm. Right. That is tricky to answer. And I think we'll wrap up with a nice question from Paige as our final question of the day. And thank you again to all four of you, Arvind, Rhonda, Beverly, and Jonathan, for joining this afternoon. The last question I'll pose in wrapping up is, to whoever would like to answer, what is your favorite thing about working at Corteva Agriscience?
I can get started, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be different answers for different people. No 2 days are the same for me, and I think I like that part. It's you're always talking to different people. You're always learning something new. It doesn't matter how advanced a degree you have. It's still a learning. Fresh learning every single day, right? You get in and you're going to walk out of there, hopefully having learned a lot more than you did, than what you knew when you were walking into the doors, right? And I think that part is great, and obviously just phenomenal support staff, and just the amount of expertise that's around you and how much you can learn from them, right? I think there's never a dull day. I think that's what I like the most about this.
Yes,
Would anyone like to add to that in closing? Go ahead, Beverly.
I can add to that. For me, it is no matter what role you're doing or what job you're doing, every single person in Corteva contributes to our mission and our purpose of feeding the world, and providing solutions to our customers, our farmers, our consumers, and for future generations to come. It's not we're doing today. What we're doing today impacts the generations to come, and each and every one of us feels that in the day-to-day work that we do. So every one of us matters. That's what I enjoy most, and you actually feel it.
Great. Well, I think that wraps up our panel conversation with Corteva Agriscience. Again, thank you to all four of you for taking the time to join us and share a great insight into what you do, not only on a daily basis yesterday, but also for attendees who are interested, what it might look like for them in their educational pathway to land a great job working at Corteva. So thank you to all of our attendees who are tuning in. Our next session will start in about 30 minutes. So if you had not had lunch or had a coffee break, I know I'm going to be jutting over to my coffee machine. Please do. We'll be back in about 30 minutes with our next panel conversation. Thank you again, Corteva. We appreciate it.